on a dark, cloudy day in the summertime, if you're fishing top water, you could do, 3 fast, fairly long strips and then let it pause, versus on a bright, sunny day, you might cast that fly. I might let it land, popper. I might let a popper land and it might not even twitch it for 20 seconds. Sometimes those fish will literally come up and sip it without you even twitching it at first.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
Today, our destination is the Commonwealth of Virginia and smallmouth bass opportunities on the James River. And our guest is expert fly fisherman and aquatic education coordinator, Alex McCrickard with Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, where he is an evangelist for all things fishing. Alex has a degree in environmental studies from the University of the South and a master's of environmental studies from VCU. He's also spent quite a bit of time out west guiding for the A-Bar A Ranch on the Upper Platte River. His articles have appeared in Fly Fisherman Magazine and Virginia Wildlife Magazine, and you'll find Alex writing fishing blogs and articles for the state and starring in great how-to angling videos as well. And lucky for us, Alex is here to tell us about the diverse fishing opportunities in Virginia and give us the lowdown on how to bend a rod for summertime smallies. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much for having me on today. Glad to be here.
Yeah, really excited about this show because it's kind of smallmouth season right now. And you were out just yesterday doing some fishing and some filming, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, we were out doing a largemouth bass piece, and it was actually fun. Got some fish, actually fishing a impoundment here outside of Richmond, Virginia, and we were able to get some fish on film. Fishing around lily pads, top water, and subsurface. So yeah, nice day yesterday. It's starting to get really hot here in Virginia. We're getting into our summer warming trend here.
There you go. That's perfect. So I saw a picture of you in one of your blogs with a pretty darn impressive smallmouth from the James River. And I'm wondering, how big was that thing? And you say you caught it in downtown Richmond, right?
Yeah, so we actually have some really, really phenomenal smallmouth bass fisheries here in the state of Virginia, and some really great opportunities and some great urban opportunities. But yeah, that particular fish was actually a fish I caught late in October. I actually didn't get a weight on it, but I measured the fish to 22 inches. So it was probably in the high fours, maybe just under 5 pounds. But yeah, it had a large articulated streamer, one of Kelly Gallup's patterns. And yeah, streamer fishing in the fall can be a good way to find some of the larger specimens on some of our bigger rivers here in Virginia. That's great.
And was that your personal best?
Yeah, that's actually the best smallmouth that I've actually put in personally. But
oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was actually a great, kind of recalling it now. It was actually a cool day, late October, and it was we actually get a fall run of striped bass from the Chesapeake Bay up the James River. They obviously come up in the springtime and they spawn in the springtime. We get a lot of our anadromous fish, those fish that live in that saltwater environment, come up into freshwater to spawn, like striped bass, American shad, hickory shad, blueback herring. We get a lot of those fish up here in the spring. But actually there's actually a smaller fall run as well. And I had actually caught a few fish downtown on a few schoolie stripers, and landed the fly behind a large boulder and hooked up on a fish. Was fighting a little bit different, kind of bulldogging, staying down low. And the fish came up near the surface and rolled and put a big hole in the surface of the water the size of a bucket. So I knew I had, something decent on. And then the fish, as smallmouth often do, the fish went airborne, and I saw, bronze and dark green, and realized that it wasn't a largemouth, but it was a smallmouth, and a fish that was well over 20 inches.
Yeah.
That was when, the heart's in the throat, and you start to lose your stomach a little bit. So
yeah, that's what's so fun about smallmouth. They are fantastic fish on a fly rod in particular. You know, everybody knows Virginia is just a beautiful state, but what makes Virginia so special in terms of the fishing opportunities there?
Yeah, really, Virginia is such a unique place to be, and if you're an angler, it's really a great state to live in. If you live in the central part of the state, there's not many places in this country that you can drive an hour and a half in one direction and be fishing saltwater on the Chesapeake Bay, targeting puppy drum, speckled trout, striped bass, or even cobia. We have a great cobia fishery on the lower Chesapeake.
Nice.
So there's a lot of saltwater opportunity, a stone's throw from if you live in the central part of the state. So you could drive an hour and a half to 2 hours down, fish the Chesapeake Bay one day. And then the next day you could drive an hour and a half to 2 hours in the other direction. And you could be on a high elevation, native brook trout stream casting, bushy attracted dry flies at, 8 to 12 inch native brookies. And so really everything in between, we have large warm water systems. We're going to talk about the James a little bit more today, but great smallmouth bass opportunities. We have a lot of large impoundments in the state of Virginia. If you think about the southern part of the state, we've got Bugs Island Lake, or it's also called Kerr Reservoir, which is really large. Smith Mountain Lake down in Southwest Virginia is a great largemouth and smallmouth fishery. And we've got Lake Anna, which is kind of between just north of Richmond and kind of south of Fredericksburg. We got some really, really large impoundments that provide awesome largemouth bass opportunities, even opportunities for anglers to target walleye.
Nice.
Yeah, so really, really diverse freshwater fishing opportunities. And then you think about trout fishing. Not only do we have, just over 600 streams as documented as holding, native brook trout, but all those stream miles added up make for more stream miles of native brook trout water than all other southeastern states combined. So we're really blessed as a native brook trout stronghold here in the southeast. We've also got larger trout streams, the headwaters of the James River, which we'll talk about later today. The Jackson River, which is one of the headwater rivers of the James, has a very famous tailwater section below Lake Muma, where you can actually book a guide or take a canoe out on your own and actually float in a drift boat or a raft or a canoe and catch. It's a wild trout fishery, all wild stream-bred browns and rainbows, and it's a bigger river feel, more of a Western experience, and we have good numbers of fish in that kind of 15 to 18 inch range. So there's opportunities to fish for trout out of a drift boat. The Smith River below Philpott Dam is a really popular one too. And then we even have some really, really nice opportunities in Southwest Virginia. The South Fork of the Holston River in Virginia is a Southwest stronghold for us. And then we've even got some really great opportunities to target Spring Creek trout. Mossy Creek outside of Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is not too far from Washington, D.C., is really our premier limestone spring creek in the state. So really, when you think about it, it's everything from like brook trout to striped bass and everything in between. We've got a wide array of warm water fisheries, and I think I would be wouldn't be fair for me to forget to mention some of our muskie fisheries, which have really taken off in recent years. And actually, we do a lot of work to build muskie fisheries and do some muskie stocking, but the upper James River is really a great muskie stronghold. And then we've got opportunities to chase these fish on the New River down in Southwest Virginia, as well as the Shenandoah, which is another great smallmouth stream. So we're blessed with a wide array of opportunity in Virginia.
Oh, it's neat. That's fantastic. That's a great overview. And you've got a lot of really interesting wildlife out there too, right? Bald eagles, bears, ospreys. You can likely see lots of those types of critters while you're fishing, aren't you?
Yeah, you name it. If you're up in the Shenandoah National Park and you're fishing for brook trout, you've probably got a pretty good shot of seeing a black bear. We've got a lot of black bears in Virginia, but I've seen all sorts of stuff from bobcats to black bears to we've a lot of turkeys, especially in the springtime. You'll see them out. You can always hear them, gobbling too when they're getting into that time of the year. There's a lot of wildlife to see here, but yeah, it's always fun getting to see some of those larger birds too. Ospreys, bald eagles are a common sight on the James River.
That's really cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the James. So here in Indiana, where I live, people talk about the James River out here. It's relatively famous, and we've got a lot of great smallmouth fishing right here in Indiana. So tell me about the James River, like the characteristics of the James. Where does it start? How does it change as it kind of flows down through the state?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So the James River is actually, its watershed is really large. It's about 10,000 square mile watershed, which makes up about a third of the state. So it's got a big watershed, and it's actually one of the longest rivers that's within the constraints of one state. It's 348 miles from the confluence of the cow pasture and the Jackson River, which come together to form the James. And they actually form the James upstream of Lynchburg at a little place called Iron Gate. So the Jackson River tailwater and the cow pasture come together, and if you add in the Jackson River miles, it's more than 348. But it's a long way, and then it's a major tributary to the Chesapeake Bay. And really, the James has got three major sections, distinct sections that kind of break the river up. And when we often talk about fishing the James, we refer to the upper James, the middle James, and then the lower James. And the upper James is really that mountainous section that's upstream of Lynchburg, right? And it's a beautiful area. The river's a little bit more narrow up there. I had mentioned earlier the muskie fishery. This is where we find a lot of the muskie. It tends to be narrower, deeper water, which is really suitable for them. It tends to be a little bit colder, and the muskie tend to do really well up there. The smallmouth fishing is fantastic up above Lynchburg as well. And really, you've got a more narrow river. It's very scenic. You think about the section of the river between Iron Gate and Snowden as being one of the most scenic rivers really in the state. Flows through, there's a town called Buchanan up there. And then actually there are Class 3 rapids at Balcony Falls on the upper James, which is actually popular. Not only is that fun if you're on a float trip fishing for smallmouth to go through a little bit of whitewater, but we get a lot of recreational paddling going on up there as well. And that's Class 3 rapids at Balcony Falls, which is just downstream of Snowden. So that's kind of the upper James, right? And then when you get to Lynchburg, you really you go from the mountains to the Piedmont physiographic province. And so that section of the James and the Piedmont really runs between Lynchburg, Virginia, all the way down to Richmond, Virginia. And that's what we call the middle James. And you get a lot of flat water in there, but you get a lot of Class 1s and 2s. And the river widens out significantly there. You've got some tributaries entering the river that give it a little more width. And it can be wide. There's areas on the James where it can be 50, 60, 70 yards wide.
Okay. It's
a large river. It can be a little bit intimidating, I think, to some folks. Where do I fish? Where do I cast? It's such a wide river. But that section, that middle James section, is really my favorite stretch. There's some areas that are, there's a lot of islands and braids and fun little side channels that you can go down on a float trip and do well.
Okay.
That section, flows through Scottsville, which is a popular area, and Cartersville. And then the river makes its way on down to downtown Richmond. And actually, it drops in elevation. Richmond is one of the only cities in the country that has Class 4 rapids downtown. So,
oh my gosh,
the Falls of the James is in downtown Richmond, and there are some, there's a lot of whitewater paddling. It's interesting. I think a lot of us anglers, we're always watching the gauge stations after heavy rain events. The river often swells and rises. We're always watching the gauge station, waiting for it to drop down to that perfect level where the river's clearing and we can get out and chase smallmouth. There's, a whole community of whitewater paddlers, and rafters they're doing the opposite. They're watching those gauge stations for it to go up, and
they want them to go up. Yeah.
And they're out whitewater rafting, and it's really unique. And but the James is fantastic. And then it drops in elevation through Richmond, and then we get to the area that we call the Fall Line, which is actually at 14th Street in downtown Richmond. And if you stand at the 14th Street Bridge and you look downriver, it's a big, wide, tidal river. And if you turn and you look upriver, you'll see rocky-strewn rapids with the Richmond skyline in the back.
Okay.
That is the geographical boundary between the Piedmont and the coastal plains. So that's actually the Fall Line. That's the highest point that tides can rise and fall from the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean.
I see.
So really cool. And then the lower James is actually a phenomenal largemouth bass fishery in its own right. And, during different times of the year, you can find, good numbers of striped bass in the river, different types of shad. And then, we have a really great catfish fishery on the lower James as well. Large numbers of flatheads and blue catfish that draw anglers from far and wide.
No kidding. Boy, that's great. And there's a lot of history on the James as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. You think about going back to, colonial settlement. You can think about Jamestown. There is a lot of history in this area, wealth of history. And the river is tied and interconnected with all of it. So it's a pretty unique resource that a lot of Virginians care very deeply about.
Yeah, you make me want to come to Virginia already here.
Yeah, it also happens to be a really good smallmouth bass river.
Exactly. How's the public access to the river?
So there's actually some really, really great public access point. There's a lot of different areas that you can access the river. There's actually a book that I would recommend checking out. It's called the James River Guide. It's written by Bruce Ingram.
Okay.
And Bruce is a local smallmouth angler and avid writer. But Bruce's book you can actually buy through our e-store at the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, through our shop, dgif.com is what it is. But it's a great guide that breaks down different sections of the river, lets you know where you can access, what the different features are like on those different stretches of the river, what rapids to look out for, what the fishing you can expect. So actually Bruce's resource is quite nice. You can also take a look at the DGIF website. We have a lot of those access points broken down for those different sections of the river. But public access is good. You can, and it's really, the James lends itself well to float trips. Being such a larger river, it's a great place to grab a canoe and float with a family member or a friend. We have a couple of wildlife management areas, department-owned wildlife management areas that provide public access, like the Hardware River Wildlife Management Area and James River Wildlife Management Area, which are on that middle James section.
Okay. So lots of access. That's good to know. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your agency and what in your role there, and what is your agency doing to promote fishing in the state?
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess for starters, Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, we're actually have just gone through a name change. We're now the Department of Wildlife Resources, and I think a lot of people know us as DGIF, but we actually are going through a name change in an effort to kind of grow the public's awareness that we deal with wildlife and the diverse work that our agency accomplishes. And we don't just manage game species, but we manage all wildlife. And I think the new name, Department of Wildlife Resources, really reflects that. But, at DWR, we're Virginia's state fish and wildlife agency. And really through sound science, we manage fish and wildlife resources for the benefit of the public. We really promote conservation of these resources. We like to connect people to recreational opportunities, whether that be hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife viewing, and we like to ensure that people have safe experiences as well. So my role at the agency as Aquatic Education Coordinator is to really promote our diverse fisheries and aquatic ecology through education, but to also really try to build a diverse network and community of anglers in the state. We really try to recruit new anglers to the sport. We try to retain our current anglers, and we try to actually reactivate anglers that have lapsed. So we actually call that effort our R3 effort, which is a nationwide effort. But again, we're trying to build a diverse network of anglers with underlying values of conservation and stewardship. And we run workshops. We really try to provide opportunities to introduce new people to the sport of fishing.
That's great. And you make some great little videos. You sent me a couple of links and videos on all different types of fishing in the state that are really good, really helpful, and full of lots of good tips.
Yeah, that's it, Steve. Just trying to build that awareness for some of our different resources and let folks know what's
good. Right. So how did you end up in Virginia as the Aquatic Education Coordinator? What's your background?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm born and raised, and my father introduced me to fishing at a very young age. And really, he put a fly rod in my hand probably when I was in third or fourth grade. I don't think he knew exactly what he was getting me into, but anyway, it's been a passion of ours, and our fish with my mother and my brothers as well. My wife comes along with me too. She likes fishing for brook trout on our small mountain streams. We like going on family hikes with a 2 or 3 weight. But yeah, just fishing from a young age. I really cut my teeth on the Gunpowder River, which is a tailwater north of Baltimore County, and grew up doing a lot of trout fishing on the fly rod. But also we would take trips often to the Chesapeake Bay, and really fell in love with the resource and chasing striped bass with a fly rod as well as, spinning rod setups. And, just kind of falling in love with the sport and conservation of the resource at an early age, and kind of led me to, study environmental science and watershed science and fisheries, which, I think helped me eventually get to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, where I realized I really did enjoy environmental education, and then ultimately ended up here in Richmond. So yeah, it's been a great experience for me.
That's great. And you spent quite a bit of time out west, right? You were a guide for A-Bar A, which is a pretty famous ranch. And
that's right. Yeah. Summers in college. And then right after college, after I graduated my undergrad, I spent another summer out there guiding. And the Upper North Platte is a wonderful resource. And that was a great experience actually as a fly fishing guide, running float trips as well as wade trips. And the Upper North Platte is really one of Wyoming's best big muscle rivers, and really enjoyed that experience. And so actually met my wife out west as well, and she was working at the ranch as well. And, she's from Richmond. So I ended up actually following her back east. And so that summer was a pretty good one for me.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah, I really got lucky. Everything kind of came together. But yeah, really enjoyed living in Richmond. It's been a great experience. And Virginia is just a great place to be if you're an angler. It really is.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, Alex and I have a mutual friend here in Indianapolis, and he told me that you were the guy that introduced him to fly fishing on the Latort River, nonetheless, where he was able to catch his first trout. And I thought you must be a pretty darn good teacher to get a newbie to catch a fisher on the Latort River.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine connected us.
Yeah.
When I was working for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, after I came back east, I guided out west, came back east. I spent a year working for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation while I was, and I was actually up in Pennsylvania, living in Carlisle, the home of the famous Latort Spring Run, and got to spend a whole year learning that river intricately. And, famous river, historical pressure, you think about names like Vince Marinero and Charlie Fox and Ed Shank, and some of these flies like the Latort Cricket and Latort Hopper, and these patterns that you can buy, in fly shops in Montana and Wyoming, all over the country, were innovated there on the Latort, was used as their classroom, so to speak. But yeah, I took Christian out and, teaching him how to cast. And I don't think there's many people that can say that on their first cast ever on the fly rod, they caught a trout on the Latort. He's probably
the first cast.
Yeah, it was pretty
wild.
Gosh. I had him casting in the grass on the edge of the stream in the heritage section, the upper famous section. We were actually in Fox's Meadow, which is a famous stretch, and there was a sulfur hatch, and put on a little sulfur comparadon, size 16, and he caught a 7-8 inch fish. But there's some days on the Latort where
there you go,
you earn your 7-inch fish. So Christian was pretty excited.
Yeah, that's great. He was excited. Yeah, he was telling me about that. Shifting gears just a little bit. So here we are, end of June, and, the coronavirus, sort of the world's coming out of that and kind of seeing a rebound in some places. How is the coronavirus affecting the guiding community there in Virginia?
Yeah, Steve, you raise a really good point. I think it's been a very difficult past few months for the guiding community here in Virginia. We got a lot of shops and a lot of outfitters here that, really you think about April and May, and they really lost a couple of months of work there. So it's just I think it's a tough time to be in that field right now. Yeah,
it's really hard to see. I know some guides that are thinking about selling their boats. A lot of places it's starting to pick up again. Hopefully it is in Virginia. But I put together a GoFundMe site to help the guides. It's called Help Fishing Guides Survive the Coronavirus. And if you can give a little bit, even $5, it'd be greatly appreciated. I know it's difficult and uncertain time for a lot of people, but if you're in a position where you can give, we'd be extremely grateful. Yeah, so let's shift gears again, get back to the James River and smallmouth bass fishing. So tell me, why is June, July, August such a great time to be fishing for smallmouth on the James?
Yeah, so really the summer months are actually some of my favorite time to be out fishing for smallmouth bass. Typically in the summer months, we have lower flows, and that lower water tends to actually be a little bit clearer as well. So it can provide for some really exciting sight fishing opportunities, and it's a great way to beat the summer heat is wet wading in these rivers, and the James lends itself really well to that. If you've got oftentimes I spend a Saturday afternoon, even here in downtown Richmond, with a pair of Chacos, rock hopping along the edge of the river and, fishing around boulders and, water willow, and just kind of targeting structure that way. Summer is really fun though, because we get to fish a lot of our topwater flies that are really exciting to fish with on the James.
Yeah.
It's a great time of the year to be looking for fish feeding on the surface. And, really, I like to do that early in the morning, or then again later in the evening. Low light conditions can be good, especially if it's a bright, sunny day. You're better off fishing, a surface fly earlier in the morning. But getting to fish poppers, getting to fish, I like the boogle bug. It's one of my favorite ones.
Okay.
There's actually a local fly tyer here in Virginia. His name is Walt Carey.
Yeah.
And Walt's bass popper is really popular here in Virginia. That's a great one. And then, double barrel poppers. There's a lot of them out there on that you can look for. But fishing poppers is really fun. You can get some explosive takes, and you can also get some subtle takes. It really kind of depends on what the fish are doing and how they're behaving.
Okay.
But fishing topwater in the summer months can be really, really enjoyable.
That can be a lot of fun. So if I'm new to smallmouth fishing, give me just a little primer on, where do smallmouths hang out? What do they like to eat? And how does it change with the seasons on the James?
Yeah, absolutely. So you raised a really great point. If we think about smallmouth bass biology, they're actually they're the same genus. It's Micropterus, the same genus as largemouth bass. So you can think of them as being, the largemouth bass is closely related, cousin. They're in the same family. They're in the sunfish family. They're in the same genus. But, while largemouth bass are going to typically orient to still water, lakes, ponds, tidal rivers, smallmouth bass are going to orient to moving water. So rivers, streams, don't get me wrong, you can catch smallmouth bass in some of our large impoundments, some of our larger reservoirs, like Smith Mountain Lake has a good smallmouth bass fishery. But they tend to be more, if you're not finding them in a large reservoir, you'll find, they tend to be more moving water oriented. So big rivers and, smallmouth bass, they're a warm water fish, but they tend to prefer cooler temperatures than largemouth bass. So these fish also tend to be what we would call piscivorous. They eat other fish. So luckily, a river like the James River has a really great forage space for smallmouth bass. There's a lot of fall fish. There's a lot of different species of chubs. Various species of darters, shiners are all really great food sources for the smallmouth. And while they eat a lot of other fish, they also, can be opportunistic as well. In the summer months, you'll find these fish hanging out under trees, and they'll, if the wind blows and a grasshopper or a cicada gets pushed into the water, they'll come up and eat those terrestrial insects, similar to how trout would behave, which really makes it sort of fun. And they're kind of like, when I think about smallmouth, they're almost like it's like a mix between fishing for trout and fishing for largemouth. You can use a bass approach. You can also use a trout approach. These fish also eat aquatic insects. I've had many times in the summer months when we have, by late July, we'll really have a lot of water willow protruding up out of the flat water sections of the James. And you'll oftentimes see dragonflies and damselflies hovering around the water willow as they, look for mates. And I've seen, smallmouth bass, slashing at the surface trying to chase these damselflies. And you can match the hatch. You can put on a damselfly, and when you see that sort of activity laid in there, you can usually get a nice take. Sure. These fish, you can also catch these fish nymphing. I mean, I've caught these fish in heavy, choppy riffles with a strike indicator, fishing, a large black Kaufman's stonefly nymph with a bead head, imitating some of those larger Pteronarctis stones that we have here in Virginia. You know, they're
Okay.
not just a Western thing. We have large black stoneflies here in Virginia. The other good one is the Hellgrammite. It's, you know, smallmouth bass love Hellgrammites, and you can fish Hellgrammite patterns under a strike indicator as well, or dead drift them and strip them. So the smallmouth bass, you know, primarily eating other fish. It also eats aquatic insects.
Alex, I want to ask you to follow up on that Hellgrammite thing. So you can strip a Hellgrammite, right? They're not just floating aimlessly in a stream. You could actually strip those things. They're swimmers, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've got they're really cool. They've got external gills that you can see. A wild looking aquatic insect. They have lots of appendages.
Right.
They hatch at night, and the adult version is called a Dobson fly. First time I encountered one was actually on the Savage River, which is a tailwater in Western Maryland, and we were camping, and I had my headlight on, and it was like almost like a small bird came right up into my face, and I didn't really know what it was. I was just in high school, but the adult Hellgrammite is the Dobson fly. They tend to hatch at night, and you can see they're large, and but yeah, so they, you know. The Hellgrammite, you can definitely do a light strip on it. You can also dead drift it.
Okay.
Which works well too.
Yeah. And what size is a Hellgrammite nymph? Hook size?
Large. Think size 2 to size 4.
Okay.
Some of my favorite Hellgrammite patterns to fish here on the James. Very famous fly angler who actually recently passed away, which was a bit of sad news for the Virginia community. Is a famous guy named Chuck Kraft. And Chuck is a well-known name in the Virginia scene, but also, you know, just in North America fly fishing. And he's developed some really, really famous patterns. He's got one called the Crittermite that works really, really well, and very, very tends to get the bass going up for a Hellgrammite. And he's also got a great crayfish pattern he calls the Clawdad too. Which is good.
Oh, I've used that. That's a good one.
That's a good one. Harry Murray, who owns Murray's Fly Shop in Edinburgh, he's got a good Hellgrammite pattern. Murray's Hellgrammite. And then speaking of crayfish, I always like fishing like a Dave Whitlock near enough crayfish. You know, that also is another good forage item for the smallmouth, is the crayfish that are here in the river.
Oh, that's great. So how do I know if I have Hellgrammites in my favorite smallmouth stream?
So, you likely do in Indiana. They're going to be prone to living in fast moving water. If you've got large riffles where there's, you know, big boulders and big cobble, lots of oxygen, you know, Hellgrammite is going to be pretty sensitive to pollution. So if you've got a clean stream with fast moving, well oxygenated water, you're likely going to find them. And again, they can tolerate warmer water temperatures. You know, you'll find them on our warm water rivers. You can also find them on trout streams as well. But yeah, they're around. You can flip over some rocks.
They're in there.
Yeah, you can flip over some rocks and you'll see them. Yeah, they're large.
Yeah, good. Okay, so the James is a pretty big river. It's smaller farther up you go. But how do you approach a big river like the James in terms of, you know, figuring out where those smallmouths are holding? And how does that change through the seasons, or does it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a piece of advice that my dad gave me that I've always found beneficial, and I asked him, you know, once fishing a large river out west, we were on the Yellowstone. I'm like, how do you approach this? You know, the river's huge. It's, you know, the Yellowstone River, like, you know, is a lot of sections 60, 70 yards wide. The James, you know, in some sections more than 70 yards wide. It's like, how do you approach this?
It's big.
My father said, well, you got to break it down and fish it like a small river. If there's an island, if there's a channel, fish it like a small river and break the water down that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten, and it really is beneficial, fish it like a small river. So there's a lot of areas on the James where there'll be braids. Take those braids and treat them like individual rivers. Break them down. Smallmouth are going to be oriented to structure, but they're also going to be, you know, looking to exert as little energy as possible to get as much bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Like trout, you'll see them holding on current seams behind large mid-river boulders. They'll be on that current seam where that fast water meets the slow water. Think about finding them on drop-offs and ledges where there's big boulders and ledges that are going to orient to that structure. The tailouts of islands, Steve, can be really good where those two current seams come together. And in the summer months, you know, where you can have on a bright day, look for the shade. You know, if you've got overhanging sycamore trees, we often find those along our riparian zones. You know, look for those fish holding in the shade. And it sometimes in the warmest months of the year, you'll find those fish at the heads of riffles or right below low head dams where there's as much oxygen as they can find. And they'll be holding up in those areas when the water temperatures get up closer to 90 degrees.
Okay.
But yeah, breaking the river down and fishing it like a smaller river is great. And, being willing to try different things. If you're like the James is a great river to float. If you're floating the James, it can be great to fish the banks in the summertime, especially if you're going to fish a surface approach. Casting poppers up under the banks can be great. You can also catch these fish with some large foam flies that you fish for trout, like a big Chernobyl ant or a cicada pattern.
Okay. Cast
up under a tree and twitch it and let it drift can be really great. And that's a good technique for the popper too, is to give it 2 or 3 twitches and then let it sit for 15 seconds. And sometimes those bass will come to the fly so slow, they'll barely put their lips around it and they'll sip it like a trout. Other times they'll hit it as hard as they can. So that's
just hammer it.
You get really, really diverse strikes, which is kind of fun. It makes it a little unpredictable.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you were telling me before the show that you have actually caught smallmouths on Japanese beetle patterns, right?
Yeah. So, sometimes you got to think outside the box a little bit. I think there's some anglers that would kind of, look at a Japanese beetle, a size 10 or size 12 Japanese beetle and opt for, a popper the size of your thumb. But we were floating, my buddy Joe Revercombe, we were floating a section of the James, the Middle James near Scottsville, actually. And it was a windy afternoon. We had caught a few fish fishing subsurface earlier in the day. It was kind of bright, catching fish on clousers and half and half, which are 2 great subsurface streamer patterns. And, windy day and fishing a bank where, there was a bunch of sycamore trees hanging over the bank and actually doing quite well, throwing a small Japanese beetle pattern. There were beetles getting pushed around off these trees into the water and made a long cast. And I was just dead drifting and twitching gently like you would fishing a trout stream. And this fish came up and sipped the fly and set the hook and, immediately realized it was, a nice 17, 18 inch, probably pushing 3 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
3-pound smallmouth. And when I landed the fish, I lipped it and it just started regurgitating Japanese beetles. So
wow,
that can happen sometimes when those fish are really keying in on something specific. They can really be looking for something subtle.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. You think about fishing Japanese beetle patterns for, spring creek trout on a place like Mossy Creek. Well, the smallmouth key it on them too. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So how important is presentation with a smallmouth? Are they super spooky? Are they super finicky?
They definitely can be. And in the summer months when the water drops and it gets lower and clearer and they've seen more and more patterns throughout the year, they can get a little bit more finicky. So as that water drops and gets clearer, like in the months of July and August, if you're floating, you can do a lot better with a longer leader, drop down your tippet a little bit. A lot of times, you don't have to drop super low, but, fishing like maybe instead of fishing 0x, drop back to 2x, or if they're really being finicky, you can go to 3. But a lot of times you'll be fine with that heavier tippet. You just want a longer leader to get a, better approach. And, but, it really depends, late in the summer is when they can be a little bit more spooky. But, in the springtime, when the water levels are high, you don't really have to worry about spooking fish as much. You just want to move a lot of water and get your fly in front of as many fish as you can. We talk about the changing seasons. Springtime, I'm often fishing a lot of streamers. And on a river like the James, it really lends itself well to a float trip. So if you've got a raft or a canoe, you can do well fishing a heavy 7-weight or an 8-weight with a 250 full grain sinking line. You can use a sink tip if you'd like, but and I like to throw big stuff. I like to Bob Clouser once said you got to deliver them the groceries. Throwing a half and half, a bit bulkier than the Clouser can be good, or just a larger Clouser. But I like tan and white for that, brown and white, as well as chartreuse and white.
Okay.
And in the springtime, you can find these fish holding around mid-river boulders in those current seams. And again, remember, these smallmouth are they're spring spawning fish. So in pre-spawn, April is really a great pre-spawn month. Late March through the month of April is a great time to get out, You're trying to find these fish as they're getting territorial. They're starting to bulking up. And then you have that spawning season that really runs through May into the month of June. The fishing can be hit or miss. They can be kind of tricky sometimes as they come off the spawn. Sometimes they can be hard to catch. And then we transition into the summer months where, you get to fish a lot of these terrestrial patterns, these poppers, these topwater approaches. And then as really in the fall, as water temperatures start to drop, the fish kind of get cued into this kind of transitionary phase where they move out of the summer water, kind of into transitionary water near ledges. And, in the wintertime, smallmouth bass will really orient to deeper holes, overwintering holes. And they want to find a place where they have cover in really low water and they have cover in really high water. So you can think about at least 4 feet deep on some of your smaller rivers, but there's areas on the James, overwintering holes that'll be, 10 to 20 feet deep. And the bass will stay down real low. They can be really difficult to catch in the winter months. You can do it with a really slow presentation, but you're honestly probably better off fishing a spinning rod or a conventional setup where you can get down low and slow. Yeah. You can catch them on fly in the winter, but you're better off with a spin or a conventional setup.
So if I'm fishing a shady bank with some depth and some current, like how deep in the summertime do I want that bank to be? What's the range?
Yeah. So you raised up a really good point. Typically what we like to do, if you think about the way a river bends, if a river's bending to the right, if you're looking downriver and a river does a, dog leg bend to the right, the thaw wag, where that current's going to be pushing up against that far bank, that left-hand bank on river left is going to have more current. And typically, you want to think about fishing those outside bends. They're going to hold more fish. There's going to be more current, better structure. And if you've got an outside bend with an overhanging limb or some large boulders, it can be really beneficial. But, think about finding a bank that, has, it really kind of depends, but 3 to 6, 7 feet can be really, really beneficial.
Okay.
But that being said, that Japanese beetlefish I talked about was probably only in about 2 feet of water, but it was tucked up in the shade under some sycamores. So you kind of just got to be aware, but oftentimes the deeper banks are better. And when the water gets super clear late in the summer, oftentimes you can sight fish. You'll see the fish cruising and you can lay it down to them with either
that's fun.
a topwater approach or a subsurface approach.
Okay.
But yeah, so it really varies, but it's great. And then, if you like streamer fishing, you can obviously strip streamers off those banks too. Or you can target subsurface structure like woody debris, log jams are all great places to find smallmouth. And then you can fish streamers right through the riffly water too.
Oh, really? Okay. And when you're talking about that inside-outside bend, would you fish the softer shoulder of the inside bend too? Will they hold there like a trout would?
Yeah, they definitely will if it's got enough depth. They absolutely will.
Okay. And
so exactly right. They'll be on that inside bend, but I tend to fish the outside bends on some of those situations, but they'll definitely be on the inside bend as well if it's got depth.
Okay.
And the right current.
Okay.
So, and also look for fish to be in back eddies. Sometimes foamy back eddies, you can have fish cruising around behind a large boulder, whether it's a mid-river boulder or whether it's a boulder up against the bank. Back eddies can be really great places to find smallmouth, especially in the summer months.
Sure.
With the topwater approach.
Okay. That's great. Talk to me about the different ways that you're retrieving flies. So, are you just, drifting and twitching those topwater flies, or are you stripping them in, or do you try different things? And when do you try different things?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Steve. I'm varying it. There are times where, on a dark, cloudy day in the summertime, if you're fishing topwater, you can do, 3 fast, fairly long strips and then let it pause. Versus on a bright, sunny day, you might cast that fly. I might let it land, popper. I might let a popper land, and it might not even twitch it for 20 seconds. Sometimes those fish will literally come up and sip it without you even twitching it at first. And then I might twitch it once or twice and then let it sit. So it kind of depends. Brighter days, I'm more prone to a more delicate presentation. On cloudier days, I tend to be more prone to move a little more water with the popper. But again, I'm varying on all those conditions and really just letting the fish tell me what they want. If I'm not moving anything with a real slow strip, I'll do a longer strip and I'll pull out, 12, 13 inches with a strip and really gurgle that bug. Have
Really?
It water, have it push some water.
Okay.
Sometimes you're better off with short little 3 to 4 inch strips and longer pauses in between. So it's kind of something that you want to play with and you want to vary with, but that's what I oftentimes do. I like fishing lighter colored poppers on light days and darker colored poppers on dark days.
That's a good tip.
That's kind of like a rule of thumb, although it's not, nothing's set in stone. You can definitely catch a fish on a dark popper on a light day, but that's kind of what I tend to do. But yeah, when I'm fishing streamers, like if I'm throwing a big clouser minnow, or a half and half, it kind of depends on the time of the year. In the late spring and summer months, you can strip it pretty fast. With the water temperature being warmer, that fish's metabolism is faster, so they have to eat more to maintain their body weight. In the winter months, as that water temperature drops and it gets into the low 40s, upper 30s, mid 30s, those fish barely have to eat to maintain their body weight. They have to eat a lot less. Obviously, really big fish need to continue to eat, but a lot of your average size fish don't have to eat as much to maintain their body weight. So, you want to be thinking in the wintertime, low and slow, and really have that slide down on the bottom. And again, you're not fishing the same water you would in the summer. If you fish the banks and stuff that you would in the summer, you're not going to find fish. You want to be fishing, deep overwintering holes.
I see. Deep, slow holes.
Yeah. So that presentation varies on what you're fishing and then kind of the time of the year as well.
Okay. And what about crayfish patterns? When are crayfish patterns the most effective and how do you fish those? I've had a lot of luck on crayfish patterns with smallmouth.
Absolutely. Crayfish patterns are great. Smallmouth is really, really prone to crayfish. Sometimes we catch them and you can literally see like a crayfish claw or, hanging out of the edge of the fish's mouth. They've been recently eating crayfish. That kind of stuff's happened. You can do well on crayfish year round. You honestly can. You can catch fish on them year round, although I really like to fish them in the spring and summer months.
Okay. Late
spring and summer is a great time. And, I like to fish them around like large cobble and flat areas. They're fun to sight fish. If you can see a fish in 4 feet of water down on the bottom, you can lay a crayfish pattern out to them and kind of do slow strips and let it kind of bounce down along the bottom. But you can do well with Chuck Kraft's Clawdad. And I like Dave Whitlock's Near Enough crayfish pattern. And yeah, I like those in the spring and the summer months. Speaking of some of Chuck Kraft's patterns, another good one is his Creel X. I don't know if you fished that one before, Steve, but it's got a lot of tinsel flash. It's really good in high stain flows, off-color water. Tends to move a lot of fish.
Okay.
It's actually a fly he developed for brown trout, but it works really well for smallmouth.
Oh, that's cool.
Speaking of streamers, a lot of your, articulated Western trout streamers that you think about guys like Kelly Gallup, the Madison River, go big or go home, throw large streamers, that kind of stuff. A lot of his patterns work really well for smallmouth. I like the Peanut Envy a lot. I like it in a tan with a cone head. And
okay.
I also like a lot of Charlie Craven's patterns. He's got some nice articulated streamers that he ties with a wool head. Kelly ties a lot of his flies, with spun deer hair. And he ties some with wool as well, but some of Charlie Craven's wool articulated patterns are really good, like the double gonga.
Okay. And we'll put some of these fly patterns out on the Destination Angler Facebook page so you can check them out and see if you want to add any of these patterns to your own fly box. So we'll put those out for you.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned a couple of times a half and half, and that's kind of like a deceiver clouser pattern, isn't it? A combo?
That's absolutely right. It's a combo. So think about, Bob Clouser's Clouser Minnow, which actually a lot of people think it's a saltwater pattern. It works great in saltwater, but Bob originally developed that for smallmouth on the Susquehanna River. So that is literally a smallmouth pattern. And then, Lefty Cray's Deceiver, some of those longer saddle hackle feathers. And really what the half and half is, it's a combo of the two that with the dumbbell eyes of the Clouser. So it's a little bit of a bulkier profile. Works great in the springtime, especially pre-spawn mode when the water's high and a little off color. You want something a little bit bulkier that's going to push a little bit more water. While we're talking about patterns, another good one is Blaine Chocolate's Game Changer, which is a multi-sectioned articulated fly. It swims really well in the water. There's a lot of different versions of it, but yeah, Blaine's pattern is a great smallmouth pattern and one that you'll want to have with you on the James.
Oh, that's great. Really good tips here on flies. So listeners, hopefully you feel like you're armed and dangerous to go hit the James River. Let me ask you about Mossy Creek. I'm really intrigued by this one. We've got a couple minutes here to touch on that. I read that, no wading, it's a spring creek. Do you have to get a permit to go fish that?
That's right. So actually, Mossy Creek is a great success story, Steve. It's a limestone spring creek that bubbles right up out of the ground. Karst topography in the Shenandoah Valley lends itself well to that stream. It comes up out of the ground at about, 55 degrees year round. The cool thing about spring creeks is that in the summer months, when a lot of your put and take streams get a little bit too hot to hold fish in the summertime, on Mossy Creek, those fish are happy, and eating all summer long in cold water. And then in the winter months, when your freestone streams get really cold and you can really only catch fish nymphing, again, Mossy's, 50 degrees, and those fish are happy. So it really creates a great year-round fishery. It's one of the reasons why spring creeks tend to grow larger trout faster. But Mossy's a great stream, and actually it's got a really cool history. It really first opened to the public in 1978. It's a great success story about, a partnership between our agency, Trout Unlimited, and other organizations as well as local landowners. And it's a good example of how, we've worked with those landowners to allow public access to private water or to private property.
That's great.
So one of the reasons with that agreement, it's just a simple agreement where if you fish Mossy, you have to carry that signed permit card and a valid Virginia fishing license with you. The Mossy Creek permit doesn't cost anything. You just have to have the permit with you. There's 4 miles of public water on Mossy, and it's a great stream. We stock advanced fingerling brown trout in there. The department does. So, think about fish in that 4 to 6 inch range get put in. And Mossy Creek can be a very challenging place to fish. Being a limestone spring creek, there's a lot of crest beds, submerged aquatic vegetation that makes for some very funky drifts. It can be tough to get a drag-free drift, but in the summer months, it can be a really great place to fish terrestrials. So think about Japanese eagles, ants, crickets, grasshopper patterns. There's some great meadow sections of the river that, you can fish. And you mentioned fishing from the bank. It is bank only in the public water. There's so much sediment and silt in the bottom of the stream that if you have anglers wading, it really ruins any opportunity downriver.
I see.
So, you can think about Mossy as being sort of reminiscent of some of Pennsylvania's, famous limestone spring creeks. It's a little different in the sense that it's really an agricultural area. It runs through farmland. You can often see cattle along the banks of the stream, and it can be a tricky place to fish. I always tell folks if you're going to check out this stream, it's really beneficial to stop by Mossy Creek Fly Fishing. Brian and Colby Troe own the fly shop. It's in Harrisonburg, and they know their stuff. They're experts in the area. They guide, on the stream often and know what's going on, what's hatching. So they're a great resource in the area. But Mossy Creek it's a place that has got really good numbers of, 12 to 16 inch fish.
Oh, nice.
And you've always got a shot at potentially moving a larger fish in that 18, 19, 20 inch range. Anglers, every year will catch fish in that 23 to 24 inch range. Those are, some of the larger specimens that are in the stream that are harder to find.
Wow.
They don't get big by being stupid, we always say. But
you're right.
We've shocked up some of our biologists at the agency have during sampling have actually turned up fish on the public section up to 25 and 26 inches long.
Oh my gosh.
There's some large fish in there, but Mossy is really fun. My favorite time to fish it is after a heavy thunderstorm when the water gets a little bit high and a little bit off color. It really kind of
stained, sure.
A little stained. It turns into a streamer fisherman's paradise. So you can, you can fish a 5 or a 6 weight fly rod and, fish a streamer and just cover waters. Mossy's not the kind of place where you're going to find a lot of riffles. It's a lot of slow meandering bends. Those fish are oftentimes tucked up under the aquatic vegetation, especially on bright sunny days. They're tucked under the aquatic vegetation, but when you get a heavy rain event with a little bit of off-color water, especially those big fish come out from their hiding spots.
They come out.
Are looking for, disoriented forage fish. There's a lot of dace and darters and other species like sculpin that are in the river that the brown trout really will take advantage of in those situations. And that's when you're likely to find some of your biggest fish on Mossy is fishing streamers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Although, in hindsight, my best fish actually came in the springtime on the lower section of the public water. There's an area that Trout Unlimited did a great restoration project on. There were some eroded banks, and Trout Unlimited led this restoration project in collaboration with our agency and some other partners. But they did a great job restoring these eroded banks, creating great structure and holding ground, planting more vegetation, and that section's holding a lot of fish. I caught a fish
that's great.
That was right at 22 inches actually it was funny, it ate a copper john nymph.
Wow.
In late March.
Oh, wow.
Late March one year. Indicator slowed, I set the hook and saw a flash and knew I had a good fish. And, typically catching your larger fish on either a big terrestrial or a streamer, but you can do well nymphing there. It can be really tricky with a lot of the aquatic vegetation. You just have to be able to guide your nymphs through the runs. And if you're fishing an indicator, you're constantly adjusting the depth.
Sure.
A lot of people like to Euro nymph on Mossy with a just tight line contact nymphing.
Right.
And, think about a guy like George Daniel who, tight line nymphs a lot. Those techniques can be beneficial on a spring creek like Mossy. There are some rainbows. There are some rainbows in the stream as well, but it's most known for its browns.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a wonderful little fishery there.
It's a really cool spot, and it's if you're passing through Northern Virginia or Washington D.C. on business, it's a good place to spend an extra day and shoot down 81.
Yeah.
And check out Mossy Creek. Really, really great.
How far outside of D.C.? How far out of D.C. is Mossy Creek?
It's probably an hour and 45 minutes, but it's doable.
Oh, okay.
It's a doable day trip. It's not super close, but it's a doable day trip.
Oh, that's great.
But again, it's beneficial, giving these local fly shops a call and stopping in when you fish these different areas. I mentioned Mossy Creek fly fishing. You got Harry Murray's shop, which is up in Edinburgh, a little further north on 81. And then, both of these shops can cue you in on the smallmouth bass opportunities as well.
Okay.
Other ones for the Upper James and Lynchburg, there's actually a couple shops. There's Tailor's Fly Shop. And then you've got Doug Lane, who owns and operates Angler's Lane. He does a lot of guiding on the Upper Jackson tailwater. And he really is good on opportunities and what's happening on the James as well as the Jackson. And then you have Albemarle Angler in Charlottesville. Also, they'll know a lot about what's happening on the Rivanna and the Middle James. So it can be beneficial to visit your local fly shop or tackle shop before you head to the river. And
completely.
Figure out what's been happening, what the conditions are, and only can benefit you.
And hire a guide if you can afford it. It's the first time to the James or some of these other places. Get a guide for even a half day if you can, and they'll get you dialed in.
It's a great way to learn about the fishery, Steve. That's it.
It is. Yeah. Alex, you've done a really nice job today giving us an overview and diving in deep into the nuts and bolts of smallmouth and even a little bit of trout fishing on Mossy Creek. So thank you so much. How can our listeners get in touch with either you or the agency?
Absolutely. So if you're interested in getting in touch and learning more, you can reach out to me. What I'll do is I'll include my email address in here, but it's my name, alex.mccrickard@dgif.virginia.gov. But you can always look at our website. It's, again, www.dgif.virginia.gov. state.gov. And
Okay.
you can learn more about opportunities. You can check out our notes from the field, which is kind of our online newsletter. We put up fishing reports, usually twice a month. You can subscribe to that newsletter. It's a great way to learn more about angling opportunities. If you're interested in hunting, we've got hunting reports, wildlife viewing updates. It's a great way to stay in tune with the agency and what's kind of happening. But there's a fishing section of our website where you can learn a lot more details about some of these bodies of water, and as well as other opportunities throughout the state, depending on whether you want to fish a lake or a stream. And a lot of that is actually organized by county. So if you know you're going to be in a specific area in Virginia, it's always good to just check out the website and see what opportunities are available.
Okay.
And you can always give us a call.
Okay. And where can they find those great little videos you've been making?
Absolutely. So those often get put out in our notes from the field, but they're also going to be on our agency YouTube page. So it's a great way to check out those videos is going to our agency YouTube page, which is just Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. They're oftentimes housed as well on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So those are other good ones to give a follow. We'll post fishing reports and updates. But yeah, Notes from the Field is another place. Again, that's our online newsletter, and you could subscribe to that by going to our website. We post our videos there as well.
Okay. Well, we'll put all this in the show notes here. If you go to the Destination Angler podcast website, you can find details here, and you can join in the conversation with our new Facebook group called the Destination Angler Connection on Facebook. Feel free to email me with any comments or suggestions at shaig50@gmail.com. That's shaigh50@gmail.com. And if you're a guide and you want to be on the show, give me a shout. And please give us a like, share, or follow on Facebook. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you found it in your heart to give us a review wherever you get your podcast, we'd certainly appreciate that immensely. As always, our music is by Brothers Fountain. And we hope you enjoy the show. And we'll see you again next week.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.